Okay, thank you everyone for attending this BizChat. We have Tim Brophy today talking about working as an industrial engineer. So to start off, Tim, why don't you share with us a little bit about your background and what you currently do?
Yeah, thank you. So I work as an industrial engineer for Hogue Hospital. My title is actually program manager, and my background is in industrial engineering. So growing up, I knew I wanted to be an industrial engineer because I met a family friend who was an industrial engineer at Disneyland. So then I went to College of the Sequoias here in Visalia for a couple years, and then I transferred over to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. I did undergrad and graduate, so it's a 4+1 program in industrial engineering, during which I interviewed and got an internship at Southern California Edison down in LA, and then actually worked at Disneyland for a summer as well.
Thank you. So can you share a little bit about the difference between industrial engineering and just a general career as an engineer?
Yeah, definitely. There are a lot of subtypes of engineering. Some of them are a little more obvious, like electrical engineer or aerospace engineer. But industrial engineering is one of those ones that people don't really have a concept of. Even applying to it, I wasn't exactly sure what I would do. And that's really because there are so many paths forward from an industrial engineering background. So industrial engineers, in essence, we make systems or processes work better. So we make things better. That's kind of the tagline. So an engineer, like a mechanical engineer, might make a car. They design a car, they'll design the engine, and then the industrial engineer would make the factory line more efficient, figure out the best times and hours for employees to come in, try to tweak things to make them work better. And then in terms of comparing it to general engineering, a lot of the majors that I met that were general engineers took some industrial engineering classes, but I think general engineering is usually what someone selects before they really know what subtype they want to do.
Okay, thank you. And really fast, I know that you mentioned Hogue Hospital, but I know that you have a few other different jobs that you're doing right now, including the one that's on the screen, which is 1 degree careers. So could you share with us a little bit about the other jobs that you have right now on top of the one at Hogue Hospital?
Absolutely. So in the spirit of making things better, I am working on a startup out of USC with one of my best friends, Gabe Ben Simon. And we're looking to help students explore trade careers from high school, so they can go straight into a trade career through an apprenticeship and get hired at places like Amazon, Google, and Tesla, who no longer require 4-year degrees. It's not for everyone. I definitely think that there's a strong path forward in college, and I recommend going to college and definitely exploring going to your local community college. That's definitely what I did, and it worked out great. And then my other job is with CBRE, and I work full-time for them as a project manager. So generally, project managers report to program managers. So it's a little bit odd that I'm a program manager at one company, a project manager at another, and then an executive essentially at a startup. But it's a team of about 6 right now, hoping to grow quickly.
And do you find that your time, your skills and your responsibilities as a project manager and a program manager at those 2 different companies, and not including 1 degree, but with the hospital and CBRE?
Yes, CBRE. Yep.
CBRE. Do you find that what your responsibilities are kind of mimic each other, even though they're at 2 different organizations?
Yeah, they do. A lot of it is dealing with problems that come up and figuring out how to mitigate those problems. Project management is a very specific field, if you will. You definitely don't need to be an industrial engineer to be a project manager, but it definitely helps because I'm looking at things from a process standpoint. So when CBRE gives me a process to use, I can come back to my manager or the director or vice president and say, hey, maybe we could do it this way, it'll work better. And that's a lot of what I do at the hospital as well. But the hospital is very specific in terms of fixing problems that the executives will bring up. For instance, the emergency room, nobody likes waiting 3-4 hours in the emergency room. So how do we get that wait time down to, say, the nation's top 10% of hospitals, which would be about 30 to 40 minutes.
Oh, okay. So do you find that then a lot of your day-to-day tasks involve problem solving then on a regular basis?
Absolutely, yeah. And it's really cool because every day is different. Well, I guess it's a very generic statement to make. Every day is not exactly different. A lot of work's in front of a computer. A lot of work is having conversations with quote unquote like internal clients. But the problems that I work on and the projects differ a lot. Not just across companies, but even within the same company. So you never get bored, you're always challenged, and you're always learning.
You mentioned that you interned, I think you said interned at Southern California Edison.
I did.
And then what happened after your internship? What have the other places that you've worked look like?
Yeah, so at Southern California Edison, I was doing a lot of database work. Internships can be a little siloed, if you will, or very specific. They usually will hire somebody to do a specific task or one project. It's really not a long amount of time, working at a company, 2.5 months. And then when I went to work at Disney the next summer, I actually took it's a quarter system at Cal Poly. I took a quarter off and worked at Disney for about 6 months through the summer. And that was totally different, still industrial engineering, but not building databases, instead looking at the merchandise area of Disneyland down in Anaheim and how to, again, make things more efficient, right? So queue time is a big one. Point of service, how many people do you need opening point of service sales systems when the park opens, when the park closes, on a really busy day like Christmas versus a really slow day in the middle of February when it's raining.
Sounds good, thank you.
Yeah.
And so then what interested you about this career path?
I like the stability of it. Industrial engineering jobs are very plentiful. Actually, I wrote it down. Yeah, so I looked up the job opportunities in Fresno area, and there's 9 pages of jobs that show up. Not all of them are local to Fresno. Some of them look like they were remote, but that's a lot of job opportunities when unemployment's so high right now. So the stability is one thing. The pay is decent. You're going to be in the top quartile of pay with your peers. And then really the opportunity to make it what you want it to be. So it's kind of, I think of it like a business degree, but it's more specific to higher level problems, which aligns you better for future executive work or being a vice president somewhere. There's a lot of industrial engineers that move up in companies pretty quickly.
Oh, wow. Okay, good to know. And so then what does a regular workday look like for you in this career path? I mean, you're working 3 different positions. So how do you have a work-life balance, and what does just a regular workday look like?
So I don't know that I'm the norm, but three jobs is not easy. It's definitely not sustainable. A regular workday when I was working just at Hogue full time, it's a typical 8 to 5. It's a lot of being your own boss, if you will. I always reported to like a director or a vice president, but there's a lot of autonomy, which I really like. Nobody's checking to make sure I show up at 8 or leave only by 5. And at the same time, I get the chance to make an impact at the organization and really understand it. So, it's a lot of computer work. It's your typical emails. I'm figuring out, what do people need done that day? I'm meeting with internal clients to see, what problems, how we've progressed with the solutions so far. If they have any other problems they want to bring onto the table. We follow a process called DMAIC, right? So it's where we define the problem at hand and measure. M is measure how it looks like in the current state. And then we want to analyze those results. So a lot of it's data collection, figuring out, what data systems exist that we can pull data from. Usually there's a gap there, and then you have to figure out how to collect data in person, whether you have a team to help collect it or it's yourself getting out there on the hospital floor or, out on the construction site. And they call it Gemba. Industrial engineering has a lot of roots in Japanese culture because Toyota actually is one of the main companies that made industrial engineering what it is. So there's a lot of Japanese words. So Gemba means going out into the field where the work actually happens. So as a manager, you're not sitting in your office just telling people what to do. You're getting down and dirty, you're rolling up your sleeves and helping. So you can see and feel what it is like to work the job. And that's when the ideas for improvement come.
Very cool. Thank you. So then do you feel like, are you working part-time or flex schedules at these other positions? And that's how you're able to,
Yes.
do these three positions? Okay.
Yeah. So the startup is very flexible. And then Hogue is consulting essentially. So I'm on call, if you will.
Okay. Thank you. So then what types of skills or abilities do you think students who are interested in this career path should be gaining or working on to really excel as an industrial engineer?
So there's college versus real life, right? So the skills you need to get through college aren't necessarily the skills you'll use every day. But obviously being in college, you want to focus on math and engineering classes. So at community college, I remember going through a physics series, like physics 1, 2, and 3, calculus 1, 2, 3, and I think 4. That fourth one took me twice. I'm not going to lie. So it definitely takes some effort. I remember my first quarter at Cal Poly, I had gotten a job at Costco. I was working like 30, 35 hours a week. Didn't have a car, so I was riding my bike 5 miles from the dorm rooms down to Costco and back, and then going to Cal Poly full time, which was very different than community college full time. Just the quarter system's quicker pace, 17, 18 units, it added up and it was challenging. And I definitely thought about quitting often, but knowing that I wanted to do industrial engineering because I knew it was going to be stable and it was going to be challenging and always an opportunity. So definitely encourage you to stick it out as a student if you know that's something you want to do. Look for like an engineering 101 course. I don't know if West Coast College offers that, but engineering 101 course is fantastic to understand all the different nuances between the engineering subtypes.
And then you mentioned, the difference between college skills and knowledge versus real world skills and knowledge. So I feel like you just spoke to the college side of it, the different courses and things that they should be pursuing. But what about those real world skills? What types of, those kind of skills or abilities do you recommend?
Absolutely. It's a good follow-up question. So it's really what people call soft skills. But in talking with a CTE director recently, she pushed back. She said, they're not really soft skills because they're actually really necessary. A lot of companies, they don't expect you to know necessarily how to give a great presentation or how to sit down and have a one-on-one conversation with the, chief human resources officer because they need to figure out how many people to hire for something. You're not expected to know that, but if you can focus on things like, presenting, creating a story and telling a story from data or from something that's abstract to you, if you can sit down and practice one-on-one conversations. Obviously, there's a classic called How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. So that's a great one. I think I've read/listened to it maybe 2 or 3 times. Also, obviously, there's a personality type that goes with engineering. So you tend to potentially be the type of person that, is a little bit nerdy, likes computers, doesn't necessarily like talking to people. So learning to overcome those barriers and have that balance of the soft skills really goes a long way.
Awesome, thank you. Can you talk a little bit about your internship at Southern California Edison, why you pursued an internship and the benefits of doing so?
Yeah, definitely. Well, for one, the internship gives you insight into what it's like, day to day, working out in the real world rather than just in the classroom. And then secondly, you're wanting to intern at companies that you might be interested in working at long term. It's a good foot in the door. And then if you can intern 2 or 3 times at the same company, if you're very convinced that you want to work there, that's a very good way to secure a job when you get out of college.
Perfect, thank you. Just a reminder for everyone who is attending this BizChat, if you have any questions for Tim, feel free to ask them in the chat box. I'll read them out to him as they come through. And until we get any questions in the chat, I have a few other questions for him. Oh, it looks like we actually have one. So this is from a gentleman named Eric. I am in a chemical engineering major, and I understand that different engineers will often work together on a project. Have you worked with any chemical engineers in your career? If so, what was their role like as compared to yours?
Interesting. Great question. I haven't worked with any chemical engineers directly. I definitely met a few chemical engineering majors at Cal Poly, and they seem to get great jobs. I mean, I think one of them went to work for Chevron as like a middle upper manager right out of college. But I haven't had the chance to work with anyone directly.
Thank you, Tim. And Eric, I can actually send you an email and we can chit chat and I can get you connected with a chemical engineer if you're interested in that career path. Okay, great question though. So Tim, another question for you is, what are some of the biggest day-to-day challenges that you face as an industrial engineer?
It's a good question. I mean, it's like everyone in the 21st century, I've definitely faced computer fatigue. Especially lately with coronavirus, you get Zoom fatigue. But specific to industrial engineering, I think the biggest challenge for me is that I'm not necessarily the subject matter expert or SME at the table. So it's very rare that somebody at the table or in the room or meeting will look to me and ask me a specific question like, oh, Tim, what do you think we should do here? Which part of me wishes I had done something more specific. Different people will go into, like, for instance, chemical engineering, right? So if chemical engineer is an SME, like, you will be seen as the highest expert in that field because you've put so much effort towards one specific thing. Industrial engineering is more general. So that's been a challenge for me lately, but I'm able to channel a lot of my creativity and subject matter expertness, if you will, into the startup. So that's been fun.
Sounds good, thank you.
Yeah.
And then my next question for you is, what do you enjoy most about working as an industrial engineer?
I love the autonomy, the flexibility, and the challenge. So like I mentioned, it's very, very rare. I mean, during the internships, I was told, do this, do that, and expected to show up on time. But other than that, during the jobs, you're almost seen as a manager right out of school. And I don't know if that's true for all engineering types, but definitely found that true about industrial engineering. So that's been really nice.
Also, Tim mentioned Engineering 101 class, and we do have an Engineering 10, an Introduction to Engineering class at West Hills College Lemoore. So if that is something that you're wanting to take, that is available for you as one of our courses. So Tim, another question for you is, what did you dislike the most about working in your current career? What's one of your hardships that you've experienced?
Other than the subject matter experts, I think prioritizing, the transfer from school to real life was hard. Just in terms of, at school, you're told what to do, when to do it, and how to do it, or you kind of know where to look to figure it out. Whereas in the real world, or during my work as an industrial engineer, I wasn't always told what to prioritize. So learning to say no, I think actually was probably one of the hardest things. Always wanting to take on what somebody asks for help regarding, just because you want to help them out and they're looking to you to make things better. So
yeah, that is a hard skill to learn, the ability to say no. Another question we had that came in through the chat is, what recommendations do you have for community college students to have a successful transfer experience to a university?
There's a website, and forgive me because it's been a while. I think it's been like 15 years, but there is a website that helps you transfer from junior college or community college to the university and make sure that your courses count. I don't remember what it's called. Do you remember?
I don't remember it. I didn't transfer, but Lionel Burgos is on our call. Is it Assist?
I think it might be, yeah.
Assist, yes. He just chatted that it might be Assist. So yes, he is familiar with that site. Lionel does that and works with students on transferring, and I believe he uses that platform.
Yeah, that was super helpful, just because a lot of colleges don't recognize other colleges' courses. So there's like little nuances. I remember losing a class and I had to combine 2 classes to equal another class kind of thing. Definitely talk to a career counselor at the university that you're trying to go to as well, if you can do that ahead of time, because they'll be able to help connect the dots between Assist and what you're taking to make sure it counts.
Okay. Did you find that it was easy to find that career counselor and connect with them, or was it a little bit difficult when you were transferring?
It was easy at Cal Poly. They definitely did a good job. I think everyone had the opportunity to connect. And then obviously, I think it goes without saying, but visiting the college just to make sure you like the atmosphere and where it's at and the people that go there.
Okay, thank you. We have another question that came through the chat. Can you give us a detailed example of a project you did at Hogue Hospital, and what type of engineers are hired by hospitals, if you know?
Question. Yes. So for the detailed explanation of a project, so in the emergency room, I spent a couple years working with them trying to improve things. There is a metric, so a key performance indicator, KPI, that is looked at nationally, and that is the time from entrance into the emergency room to being seen by a practitioner. And in the fine print, the practitioner does not necessarily have to be a physician. So once we realized that, then we were able to figure out how many nurse practitioners we could hire to be there during peak periods and have patients seen. We got it down to, I think it was 12 minutes, which previously it had been an hour and a half. So that was a massive win.
Wow.
And that was a project that went through the DMAIC process I mentioned before. And it took probably about 2 or 3 months.
And how long did that, 2 or 3 months, you said, the transition of researching to implementation?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay.
From this initial discovery, meeting with the executives, and we typically would pick a couple staff from the front line to include in the process. Again, going back to Gemba, you go out there and you see it, but also you want to include people that are there every day.
Sounds good, thank you. And then do you know what type of engineers hospitals typically hire?
So I don't know if they hire any other specific engineer subtypes. Hospitals are weird in the naming conventions for the positions, because we do have an engineering group, but they're more of like building maintenance. So I don't think they have actual engineering backgrounds, at least not the ones I had met. And then of course there are systems engineers. So systems engineers and industrial engineers are very close. They're very similar. Some programs are actually dual, industrial and systems engineering, like Georgia Tech, I think, offers that. And the nuances between the two, from what I remember, systems engineers are more focused just on the process, just on the overall system, and a little bit more leaning towards computer processes, whereas the industrial engineers have a little bit of a subtype from manufacturing. So you don't often see a systems engineer go from school to working at Tesla out on the floor, whereas an industrial engineer might do that.
Okay. And then also, I know we've talked about Hogue Hospital and an experience, an example from your time there. But what about at the CBRE?
Yes, at CBRE.
Yeah, CBRE, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. It's a weird name. It's Coldwell Banker Richard Ellis.
Okay.
It has quite the colorful history, if you want to look it up. But I'm a project manager there, so I work specifically supporting Chase Bank. It's not really related to industrial engineering at all. I actually took it because it's remote, which turned out to be awesome because of COVID. So I've been there about 1.5 years now, but it's just pure project management and improving the Chase banks, retrofitting in terms of like construction and stuff.
Okay. And since it's remote, then are you meaning like online banking and things of that nature, website?
Sorry, yeah. So it's my day-to-day is remote. I guess you would call it 80% remote because I do travel to specific Chase branches. So we'll coordinate the construction, and then once the budget's set and the construction schedule is set, then we'll have an initial kickoff meeting, walk the branch, make sure it looks like it's supposed to, according to the plans, and then we'll follow the construction schedule, which is 3 to 4 weeks, and then we'll have a final meeting to make sure it looks correctly.
Okay. And so then your basic role then as working with Chase Bank is helping in their starting of new branches. Is that what I'm
Yeah, it's not so much on the new side, it's the retrofit side. So if a branch is a little bit older, I did a couple in Fresno actually. If they're built in the 80s or 90s and they haven't really been updated lately, then we'll come in and do new wiring for the lights, carpet, paint, sometimes that kind of thing.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Sorry, I just needed a little clarification on that.
It's a very specific job.
So then back to some of my questions that I have for you. What education, I know you mentioned transferring and we talked a little bit about education already, but do you have anything else to add when it comes to education needed for the specific career path? You mentioned math and engineering 101. Transferring, going to a 4-year, do they need to go on to further education after that 4-year institution, or what are you?
You don't need to. I would start by identifying the university, and like once you hone in on the university that you want to go to, then figure out those courses. That's the most important part, so you don't waste time. In terms of ancillary education, you can get your professional project manager certification, or PMP. I did that. That can be helpful if you want to go the project management route. And then I did Toastmasters as well, which I don't know, I'm sure there's some local chapters here, but it's a public speaking course, or not course, I don't know what to call it, organization, where you achieve different levels of public speaking. Obviously didn't help me a lot, but it gave me the confidence to present when there's a project on the line.
Yeah, I've heard of Toastmasters. We actually, I believe, have a chapter. I think that's what you would refer to it as, a chapter in Hanford. So if students are interested in being a part of Toastmasters, it does help you with public speaking. Tim, do you feel like it was worthwhile being a part of that organization from your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely helped. And it was interesting because while I was in it, I felt very fluid and I could hold conversations and tell a story. And then since I haven't been doing it for the last 1.5 years, then I think some of the skills stuck, but some of them definitely disappeared.
How often did you meet with Toastmasters?
It's weekly. And then a lot of it's a very organized structure. So during the hour meeting, a lot of it is impromptu, questions that you'll answer, or voting or ranking other people and giving them feedback. And that's actually really helpful because then you start to notice the ums and the ahs and the pauses and how to articulate well in front of a group. And then you present it's up to you, honestly, but I think it was probably like every 3 to 5 weeks. I would do like one presentation. It's very short. You do like a 2-minute or a 5-minute presentation, but it gives you the chance to think something through, memorize it, and try to articulate it as well as you can.
Nice, thank you. Students, I have one more question for Tim. So feel free to ask any last minute questions in the chat box. But Tim, my last question for you is, what experiences should a student seek out who is interested in becoming an industrial engineer?
Interning is very important. I did not intern when I was in community college. In hindsight, I would have tried. I think I would give that advice. Definitely try. It might be a little bit hard to find something local, but just getting out there and working in the real world will give you good experience to build on. And then definitely when you're at a university, to try to do it every summer and target the companies in the field that you want. Or if you're unsure, you can mix it up and, if you're doing industrial engineering, you could do one summer's manufacturing, one summer's more project management, go that route. And then just being opening to other similar opportunities. So industrial engineering, like I've mentioned, you can go into the manufacturing side of things. It kind of has this bifabrication where you can do manufacturing, or you can do more of what we call service systems. And service systems being hospitals, theme parks, banks, I guess. So that's fun. And then there's a third kind of tertiary that's grown out of industrial engineering, and it's open to all engineers, but you see a lot of IEs going into it, and that's sales engineering. So my friend that I'm working on one degree, the startup with, he actually is a sales engineer for an HVAC company. And he helps sell large air conditioning systems. That's a fun route because you're not doing very technical engineering work, but you're helping run a team and you're making a commission. So there's a lot of upward growth in terms of your salary.
Very cool. Thank you. That's great advice. Good things to know. Students, I asked Tim earlier if he would be interested in mentoring any students who are interested in this career path, and he agreed to that. So I'm going to put his email in the chat. If you have any questions for him or want to reach out to him on a one-on-one basis, you can send him an email. I just shared that with you in the chat box. So feel free to email him if you have any further questions that we didn't address in this BizChat. I also am going to be posting that survey link I mentioned at the beginning of the BizChat, which just helps us ensure we are creating meaningful experiences to meet and engage with industry partners. So please take a few minutes to complete that survey. There's just a few questions. And again, it just helps us make sure that we have good events for you that are helpful in your career path. So thank you so much, Tim, for doing this BizChat with us. I appreciate it. And I know all the information you shared was really helpful for our students.
Yeah, I'm hoping it was helpful to at least one person. That would make it worth it.
It was helpful for me, and I'm not even a student, so thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay, bye, guys.
Take care, everyone. Bye.